Okay, here we go, on air. Hello to everybody. Welcome to another night with New Zealand wines, and actually talking about night. Good morning to Ed Donaldson in New Zealand. It's actually pretty early in the morning. He just told me he got up at 6:15 and it's 7:05. And instead of coffee, he's starting his day with a glass of Riesling in front of him. Thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. It's a much better start to a glass of Riesling than a glass of coffee. I've just found out, so I need to replicate this in other mornings, I think. No, great to be here.
Thank you. And we are still waiting for Barbara Lawson from Lawson's Dry Hill. We realized already in our last Google Plus Hangouts that there are still some technical problems, so we are hopeful and that she will join us and pop in as soon as she gets online. By the way, my name is Caro. I'm Caro Maurer. I'm Master of Wine, and I'm a very lucky person because I had some occasions and some time which I spent in New Zealand, for example, in January this year, visiting Pegasus Bay, but I've never met Ed. I met his brother. You have been traveling around, Ed, when I've been there.
Yeah, and I've done a few often. There's usually one family member around at least at a time, thankfully, with three of us working for the business. But yeah, I'll have to get you next time.
Well, this is actually the first time I see and speak to you in some kind with a vision of you. This is our sixth New Zealand Wine Talk, a series where we are tasting wines together on the two ends of the world, bridging the distance, bridging the time, and it gives us the opportunity to taste the wines together with the winemakers or the representatives from the wineries and talk to them face to face. Tonight we are tasting wines from wineries which are pioneers in their fields. And this is not only regarding the two varieties we're tasting tonight, Riesling and Gewürztraminer. I do know that you usually expect Sauvignon Blanc. And good morning, Barbara.
Good morning. I'm sorry for the delay.
Good morning, Barbara. Welcome, Barbara.
You're very welcome, and we appreciate that you got up so early for us, and like Ed, having some Gewürztraminer instead of coffee for the breakfast. Great to see you.
Okay, carry on.
She got to make the perfect rock star entrance, didn't she? Right at the last minute.
Yeah,
much better entrance than mine.
A diva. I didn't know that, Barbara. I just said you're pioneers in New Zealand, not only regarding the varieties which you or your wineries are specialized in, like Ed and Pegasus Bay and Riesling, and Barbara and Lawson's Dry Hill and Gewürztraminer. You're also pioneers in some other fields. Barbara, you and your husband Ross, you have been one of the driving forces behind the introduction of screw caps in New Zealand. And Ed, your father is one of the pioneers discovering actually the Waipara regions. So I think we have a lot to talk about tonight. What I wanted to ask you first is just introduce yourself with a few words, a few sentences to our guests who are with us active in the Google Plus Hangout, and to our guests who are watching us on YouTube. Barbara, you want to go ahead?
Okay, obviously I'm Barbara Lawson. 24 years ago, my late husband and I established Lawson's Dry Hills. It grew out of being basically a grape grower and the heightened interest we had in the end product from the vineyard. So it was a gradual thing, and we resolved early on that we would be in the business for a long time, and we wanted to emphasise the quality aspect So we wanted to build a winery straight away for the production of the wine. Okay, that's basically it. I'm still involved. My husband died 6 years ago, and we carry.
You are difficult to hear for us, Barbara.
I beg your pardon?
Now we can hear you again. Could you just repeat your last sentences? I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I changed position. This is better. I just said that was, we've just done 24. They are 24th vintage, and we do carry on. My husband died 6 years ago, and we still have a very tight, small team at the winery directly involved.
Great, thank you very much. Ed, would you just say something about you and Pegasus Bay?
Sure. So yeah, my name is Edward Donaldson. I take care of the marketing for my family business, Pegasus Bay. I actually trained as a chef when I left school, and I ran the kitchen. Well, I eventually took over running the kitchen at the Pegasus Bay restaurant while I was doing the marketing and the sales back in well, almost 20 years ago now. 25 years ago, and yeah, gave up chefing about 7 or 8 years ago, and my wife took over the running of the restaurant, and I've been focusing my time on exports basically, and marketing the wines. The winery itself we established in 1985. So my dad actually had the first vineyard in Canterbury, which was a little hobby vineyard just on the outskirts of Christchurch. He grew grapes there with, he planted a vineyard, he grew grapes with some friends of his, most of whom were doctors. He was a doctor as well. And he made the wine in the garage at home for it would be around 10 years. And then in the early 80s decided to do something on a bigger scale and look for a property that we now have planted as Pegasus Bay. So we looked at land all over Canterbury, and it was we decided to plant here in the Waipara Valley because the temperatures were a little bit warmer than the rest of Canterbury. Still very much a cool climate, but we chose the site up here because of the range of hills, which just make it a little bit warmer and for more consistently ripening. So we now have 6 family members that work for the business. My older brother Matt is the winemaker. My younger brother's the general manager. I take care of the marketing. My wife runs the restaurant. My mother does all the grounds and the gardens, and my father oversees the viticulture, the winery. Our focus is Riesling and Pinot Noir. They're our 2 main varieties, and they have been right from the start, really. And then we have a third of our vineyard and all the other varieties that we produce. But Riesling and Pinot Noir is the main focus.
Okay, great. I see all the beautiful places where you sit in the camera. I actually am sitting in an office like the most of you. I see that Johan from Sweden is sitting in his kitchen, but I decorated a bit to give anybody who is not so familiar with New Zealand an idea where Barbara and where Ed are actually located. You do know that New Zealand is at the other end of the world. You can't fly any further, you can't travel any further than, let's say, Northern Europe and New Zealand. And New Zealand is 2 islands, the Northern Island and the Southern Island, and both of them are actually sitting on the Southern Island. The most famous region probably is Marlborough in the northern border of the Southern Island. And Ed just said that his father planted in Canterbury. They are actually a bit north, the winery is a bit north of Christchurch in Waipara. So you have an idea where we are talking, what we are talking about. Barbara, let me just ask you, I mean, I just said that New Zealand for us is some way Sauvignon Blanc and recently Pinot Noir, but even in Germany we are not so familiar, or we don't know so very good that so very well that you also grow and cultivate Gewürztraminer. How did you and your husband Ross fell in love with Gewürz?
Well, it was a slow courtship, I have to say. We didn't really know much about variety when we first planted it. It was back in the days, it was just 1981 actually, and we were in the first wave of grape planters in Marlborough, and we had signed a contract with a then wine company, and they actually told us what variety we were going to plant. I had never heard of I couldn't pronounce the word for a start. I'd never heard of it, but we grew up with the grapes and their flavours, the wonderful flavours that the Gewurztraminer produces. The original vineyard, which my back still remembers planting, it was in the days when you had to dig a hole and put the vine in, and it still surrounds the winery here where I'm sitting. Some of the plants have been replaced because of phylloxera, but essentially the vineyard remains as it was in 1981, apart from taking some rows out to expand the winery. Being a Marlborough winery, of course, our main emphasis is Sauvignon Blanc, but we do, obviously, as you've emphasised, we do grow some really good aromatics, one of which is Gewurztraminer. Another grape that is becoming very apparently suited, and the production of Pinot Noir is really coming to the fore in Marlborough. So that's what you wanted to know.
Great, thank you very much. And I also forward the question to Ed. I mean, Riesling in New Zealand, it's really still an exception. I mean, if you look at both of the islands, they have vineyards in the size of, let's say, 36,000 hectares altogether, and only around 800 are planted with Riesling. And your father was actually one of the really early people discovering Riesling. Why? How did he? What made him fall in love with Riesling?
So, yeah, I mean, Mum and Dad were they spent a lot of time in Europe with Dad was on sabbatical as a doctor. He was a neurologist, and he often spent time over in the UK. And while he was over there, they travelled around a lot of the European wine regions, a lot through Germany, through France, and Italy mainly. And I guess they really fell in love with Riesling from Germany in particular. They loved the Alsatian and the Austrian styles as well. But it was the German Rieslings that really got them excited. And even though Riesling was quite an unpopular variety at the time, it was everyone told them that it was a very misunderstood variety, and that you wouldn't be able to sell it, and there'd be no point in making it. And my mother ended up convincing my father to grow, I think it was 3 rows of Riesling. This was 2 years after we planted the original vineyard. We didn't actually plant Riesling with our first plantings because we were just told it would be impossible to sell. But as I say, a couple of years after that, we planted a few rows, and my brother made a wine from the first harvest, and people, to my father's amazement and delight, seemed to really like the wine, and it actually sold very well. It was only a very small volume, but it sold very well, and so we just expanded the plantings, and we grew more and more until about 15 years ago, Riesling became our largest planted white varietal. And around the same time, it took over as being our #1 selling variety across the board of everything that we make, just behind Pinot Noir. So I guess it's I can't really honestly say why it's actually been a variety that we seem to be able to sell, where most people do struggle to sell Riesling. it still remains to be our number one selling variety, and I guess we've been making it for quite a long time now, and we have quite a few different styles of Riesling that we make, and you know, I think people sort of us a bit as a Riesling specialist, and for whatever reason, it just seems to have gone well. Our style of Riesling has changed quite a lot over the years, but yeah, it still remained to be, you know, to very strong sales.
As a German, I can totally understand the success of your Riesling. When I introduced the two of you, I already said you have been not only, or your wineries have not only been pioneers regarding these varieties, but also, Barbara, you and your husband, you have been joining forces to establish screw caps. Can you just tell us a bit of the adventure you have gone through, and how satisfied you are with using screw caps, or with the distribution of your wines in bottles sealed with screw caps?
Well, I guess it grew out of a growing frustration with the percentage of cork and cork-tainted wines that we were experiencing. I, at the time, was working quite a few hours in our cellar door, our tasting room, and I was appalled at the amount of wine that I was tipping out. And I guess it was a combination of those sorts of factors that led to the formation of the Screw Cap initiative that was formed here in Marlborough. My late husband Ross was the first chairperson of it. It was there was 4 people involved that really drove the whole thing. It really was a movement waiting to happen. There was a groundswell that we just tapped into. Everybody was concerned. I mean, if it was a product like baked beans and the failure rate was the wine, the cork-tainted wine that we were experiencing, nobody would have put up with it. Just because it was wine, people were accepting the fact that it was a type of Russian roulette with the bottle that you opened. So that was 2001. 2001 we closed all our wine under screw cap, and we've never looked back. The percentage now in New Zealand, I think, is probably about 96% is under screw cap. So it's a movement that grew very quickly. As I say, it was just something waiting to happen. There obviously will never be 100% screw cap closed wines in the whole world. There will be maybe some other closure that comes along that is even better. Just as an example, I think in Europe it's probably not so widely accepted. The idea seems to be that you can close wines that have a short shelf life that need to be consumed quickly. That's okay to do a screw cap, but the really serious ones you don't use screw cap. So that attitude, I think, is gradually changing. Just as an example, I was in a very lovely hotel in Rome a couple of years ago. The restaurant was a Michelin recommended restaurant, and I treated myself to, I thought, I'm in Rome, I'm going to have pasta and Chianti. So I did, and the young lady that bought the bottle, I noticed that it had a screw cap. So I remarked upon that, and she repeated to me the mantra that we had established all those years ago. She said, "Oh, it is better for the wine." So there it was, circle, in about 10 years. So I'm happy. I think it's nothing, you can't force these things upon people. I think people consider it, the value, their attitudes. I think in New Zealand and Australia we have a license to be innovative. We're not totally tradition bound. So it depends on what part of the world you come from, I guess, but I have to say I think it is better for the wine.
I think we get used to it more and more. It's accepted in Europe more and more. And I just said your father has been one of the pioneers in a region. For us, if we think of New Zealand, which comes to our mind, the wine region which comes to our mind right away is sure the dominating Marlborough region. And maybe we know something about Marlborough or Hawke's Bay or Central Otago, but Waipara is still one of the, especially in Europe, one of the more unknown wine regions. So it was somehow a very brave decision to push Waipara as your father, or to discover Waipara as your father has done it. How did he do it? Why Waipara? Why was this his choice?
So we were living in obviously we were living in Christchurch at the time, and Dad was at the working at the public hospital in Christchurch, and had his own private practice happening as well. So well we could have sort of lifted our whole sort of life up and moved somewhere else. We didn't particularly want to do that, and with the early experimental sort of phase that it had with a little hobby vineyard, he was very convinced that Canterbury had the right conditions for growing, premium wine. So he really chose Waipara. I mean, we looked all over Canterbury really, and the reason he chose Waipara was, as I said earlier, that there's a range of hills, the local name called the Teviotdale Range, and that range of hills starts just at the very start of the Waipara Valley and ends at the end of the valley. You've got the Teviotdale Range on one side, which protects you from the easterlies, so a very cooling breeze that comes off the Pacific Ocean, and in Waipara you don't get the easterlies, so your temperatures, as I say, are on average about 1 or 2 degrees warmer there. And then on the other side you've got the main divide, which is the Southern Alps that divide the east coast from the west coast, and they catch a lot of the rain clouds, and a lot of the rain, most of the rain falls on the west coast. The east coast is very, very dry. Yeah, a combination of being a little bit warmer and being dry, and also having the right kinds of soils that we were looking for. In Waipara, you've got quite a few different sort of soils and subsoils, but the main there's two sort of main soil types, which are what we call the Glasnevin gravels, and they are an old ice age glacier, a lot of river stones, and very, very free draining soils. That's what we're planted on. We're on the north facing terraces of the Waipara riverbed, and then there's also clay soils with some limestone on the foothills. And I think that's a reason that I think there's been quite a lot of media attention about the Waipara Valley in recent years from wine writers, just making a lot of noise about it as a Pinot Noir region, and because of the in theory the limestone content of the soil here. Yeah, you're dead right. The area is relatively unknown. It is. I think the basic reality is that the other regions have done a much better job of marketing themselves as a region. In Waipara or in Canterbury, we are a lot of very small producers. Like we're considered a sort of a medium. Well, we're in Waipara sort of a medium to large producer. In actual fact, on the New Zealand standards, we're a pretty small producer. Well, small to medium. But there are a lot of just husband and wife teams, really small producers that don't have a lot of marketing budget, and a real. It's actually becoming a lot better in the last 5 or 6 years. There's a cluster of us that have got together, an unofficial group, and we've been promoting ourselves domestically, but also starting to do that internationally in Australia. And it's a group of sort of like-minded producers who's within the valley, whose wines we respect, and we sort of all get along, and we've sort of formed our own little unofficial group to start to do some to be a bit more proactive with promoting the region, because it has been quite dysfunctional up until the recent times, with a lot of people with very different agendas and very different ideas and it's been really hard to sort of pull a whole group together and market ourselves as the whole region collectively. So so as I say, we've formed a little sort of subgroup, and we're hoping that this will help the region as a whole.
Well, there is actually one common thing before we taste your wines, which I want to point out before. Both of you, Barbara as well as Ed at Pegasus Bay, you're producing wines with residual sugar. So we will taste 2 wines with about 20 grams of residual sugar. As a German, for me, I feel very familiar with these wines. But are the Kiwi consumers used to wines with residual sugars, and are they increasingly popular in your own country? Barbara?
I guess, well, shall I start, or?
Sure.
Yeah, I think New Zealanders are fairly open-minded when it comes to most things, really, but certainly to residual sweetness. Very, very different market to Australia. If you're selling wine with residual sweetness in Australia, you'll just constantly get people saying, you know, oh, that's a bit sweet, mate, and that kind of thing. You know, that's got to be bone dry and steely for them to want to even entertain drinking the wine. That is changing a bit, as you know, more and more over the years. You're starting to see more European Rieslings coming into Australia, and people are looking at more than just one style. But certainly in New Zealand, we make a range of Rieslings from dried through to very, very sweet, and we've always found people have been very open-minded to some residual sweetness there. A lot of the time people say they don't. They come to the tasting room and they say, oh, I don't like sweet wines, or I don't like anything with residual sweetness. They'll quite happily drink Coca-Cola or eat cake, but for some reason the thought of it with wine is, but then once you get them to taste the wine and you can explain to them about the balance and the acidity and the wine, how it actually finishes dry, and that acidity kind of balance, really refreshes the palate and balances the sweetness. 99% of the time, people really enjoy the wine once they give it a go. One thing I have noticed, I think people's palates generally are starting to get a little bit drier. We have been making our off-dry Riesling a little bit drier over the years than what we used to. Not really to follow a trend. We've just our style of Riesling has evolved quite a bit over the years, and we have people seem to have responded well to being a little bit drier, and we have started producing a dry wine called Bel Canto, which is it's kind of a style that's harvested very, very ripe but fermented dry. So it's not a really sort of lean, steely dry style. It's a very kind of rich, full dry wine. So I think the balance is the key, really, and that's people. I think people in New Zealand do seem to respond well to balance, to residual sweetness, as long as it's balanced.
Barbara, what's the vision you had when you started to make Gewürztraminer? Was it Alsatian style, or was this a natural thing to come in your wine, to produce wines with residual sugar?
We don't make a lot of the wine that we're going to take. Small production. Our main production of Gewurztraminer is dry style, just off dry. It's normally got between 7 and 9 grams residual sugar. This one is, we don't make it every year. It's the Pioneer series that was created in honour of Ross, the pioneer. And the winemaking team identify something in the vineyard that they want to nurture through to the bottle, something special that will depends on the season, obviously, how long we can leave it out to get the sweetness in the grapes. As far as popularity, well, because of a small production, it's not. It's very hard to ascertain. But people that tasted at the tasting room, just what Ed was saying, really, you really have to get people to taste wine to appreciate it. And once you start explaining that it's balanced, it might be have a lot of residual sugar, but it is balanced. It's not just like sucking on a lolly. It's there's a lot of other things happening in there that make a beautifully balanced wine. So I think it's just getting people used to it, getting it in their mouths, really. It's like any wine tasting. And people decide whether they like it or not. And the people that like this style of Gewürztraminer really seek it out. They really do. They just adore it.
Great. Because of the confusion, it was me being confused at the beginning. I didn't tell you what we're doing today. After talking, we have some wines with us, all of us, and let's taste the wines first, and let's talk a bit about the wine, and then Barbara, Ed, and all the others here. We would like to open the discussion to all our participants, and you can ask them questions, they can ask you. But let's taste the wines first. And as I do know that they're around the same residual sugar, why don't we start with the Gewürztraminer first? I actually tasted the first time today. I never had it before, and thank you very much for giving us the Pioneers range. I didn't know that. I didn't get this, that it was made for your husband. So this is the Gewürztraminer of Barbara, which we're tasting now. And for me, it's actually a pretty typical one. From all the aromas, the more floral, the exotic fruit profile. I like this leafy rose petal taste also. And it has this oily texture, but even with this oily texture in this body and the residual sugar of, I think it's 19 point something, it never gets fat. It really has a very good shape, a very good silhouette, and it's a very pleasurable wine. Barbara, can you tell us how you make it?
Just first of all, where the grapes are growing, the soil structure is a clay-based soil which retains the moisture. So, and I think it adds to the intensity of the flavours in the finished wine. Even with our drier style, we have a intensity of flavour that's not found in other, I think, in other Marlborough Gewürztraminers. This year was a good year. Every year's a good year in Marlborough. What am I saying? It was a seamless year. So the grapes were out for a while. The lovely clean pick. It was put straight into older barrels. Now about a third of those were inoculated. The other barrels were left as an indigenous ferment. And then they were, at the end of the fermentation, they were blended. Not all of it was used in the total blend. But it was a very simple winemaking, just using the older barrels.
When actually,
sorry, it's not been in the bottle quite a year. It was bottled in November in 2013.
What are the occasions when you recommend a wine like this? When would you drink it? What would be the best occasion?
Oh, you mean a food match or
for example, or a food match, or just occasion? Is it a food wine, or would you drink it in the evening or by itself?
Oh, well, it's your pleasure, really, when you drink it. With any wine, even though it's got about 20 grams residual sugar, it's not made particularly as a dessert wine, but I think it would go with quite a lot of desserts. It would also be a lovely aperitif wine, I think, with, say, a pate or something like that, or cheese, rich cheese. Or just to sip at a glass of it. It's got some lovely complex flavours in there. to appreciate it. Sometimes a wine drunk by itself is the way to appreciate the flavours in the wine.
It's a very good occasion tonight. Thank you very much for sharing this wine with us. Let's go to the Riesling. Everyone has the Riesling in front, and Riesling, as you do know, is usually something which we call a very German variety. It's the Pegasus Bay, 2010, and I think it has about the same residual sugar than the Gewürztraminer, about 20 grams. But why don't you
just a little bit over here?
About it.
Sorry, what was that question? The last question?
Just go ahead and tell us how you make these wines in New Zealand.
Okay, so yeah, this is one of 5 different styles of Riesling that we make. This is actually the one we've been making the longest. It's what we call our classic Riesling. It is also we would call it sort of off dry. It's in reality it's more towards the medium spectrum at just over 20 grams, and it I guess as a style, as a Riesling producer, we've been the biggest change in the way that we make the wine now is that we're picking a lot later than what we used to. Some of the early years of making Riesling, we were very, very inspired by the very I guess lower in alcohol, some of those very sort of classic sort of Mosel sort of cabinets, that Spätlese sort of styles, and we did pick a lot earlier than what we do now. What we've found is by leaving the fruit to hang for longer later in the season, we're obviously getting more concentration as some of the berries are starting to shrivel, but also the spicy orange zesty character, which is quite a unique character to the region. We seem to, as far as I'm aware, I haven't seen that character in other regions, and it's, as I say, it's something that we only get when we leave the fruit to hang for a prolonged period of time. So that's sort of something we've moved towards. So we're picking sort of into May, and even with some of the other Riesling styles into June, but certainly May. And the result is the wines are a lot sort of a lot richer and fuller than perhaps what they used to be. We love botrytis. There's a lot of people that when botrytis starts to come into the vineyard, they will quickly want to get rid of it and pick straight away, cut the botrytis out and pick it straight away. We actually we really embrace the botrytis. It's something that my brother feels really adds complexity, and he really loves the stone fruit sort of character and some of those kind of ripe phenolics that come with it. And so botrytis is something in all the different styles of Riesling that we make. Even the dry style, we like a decent amount of good noble botrytis in the mix. So
for me, this wine is actually very, very typical Riesling. It's screaming Riesling with its typical tangerine or nectarine and peachy and citrus aromas. Kind of honey, but it has this beautiful, slightly smokiness, which usually comes with Riesling. And to be honest, I've taken this wine into a blind tasting with German wine experts, and everybody thought that this is a German Riesling. Do you agree, or would you distinguish this from a German Riesling?
So I mean, well, first of all, I will take that as a massive compliment, because we absolutely adore German Rieslings, and especially some of the new wave of German Rieslings that have been coming out, in recent years, where they are a bit sort of richer and fuller, and at some of the drier styles, those sort of Grosses Gewächs and the likes. We just absolutely adore those wines. We've never set off to necessarily make a you know, a German style Riesling, or when we with our Pinot Noir, we never sort of try and make Burgundy. We're always trying to make a white expression of of Riesling or Pinot Noir. But I guess the techniques are the same all around the world. And when the people that really inspire my brother in the winery, largely come from Germany, then I guess those wines are a massive inspiration to him. And then with Pinot Noir, Burgundy would be the same thing. But I think that for me that orange zest and orange peel is something that sort of is this really intense orange zesty character that we get. That to me is possibly a little different. But I mean, if you looked at a sort of classic Mosel's Cabernet or Spätlese, you'd probably be getting a lower alcohol than what we've got here. We're sort of up in I'm not sure what that particular bottle says, but 12, about 13, yeah. So we're probably sort of at that richer, sort of fuller end of the spectrum, I guess. Perhaps not quite so delicate as what can be seen. So I'm thinking maybe sort of the Pfalz or the Rheingau or that sort of area is probably more is more towards the style of Rieslings that we're making nowadays. But hopefully with a that real white spice and orange zest as a bit of a signature.
Thank you very much. As you already have seen, we are not all by ourselves, just the three of us. We have guests. We have guests from Germany and we have guests from Sweden this evening. And actually, I would like to open up our discussion now to everybody who is here with us, active in the Google Plus Hangout. And maybe I ask you just to present yourself like the winemakers have done. Present yourself with one sentence. Claudia, would you like to go ahead? Who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing?
Okay, hello. Nice to see you. Kia ora to New Zealand. I'm a journalist from Hamburg. I started a magazine about New Zealand in Germany 2.5 years ago. And I tried to open up a platform, an online platform to present New Zealand in Germany. So in the beginning, I did it together with the students. Then it was a pilot project. And now I try to go on with new ideas to present, especially winemakers, especially culture makers, and other people to German in Germany. And that's why I get the invitation to join this interesting way of tasting wine tonight.
Next in the picture for me, it's Jan and Elizabeth. Would you go ahead, please?
Yes, hello. I'm Jan, and I have a sommelier education, which I took several years ago because I was very interested to learn more about wines. But today I'm a wine blogger. I'm writing for a blog called popit.nu. Write about beers and wine, and Riesling is actually my favorite read. So I really like the Riesling. I think it's very Mosel-like.
Elizabeth?
Yes. Hi, I'm Elizabeth. I work at the PR agency here in Stockholm, representing New Zealand wine. And I'm quite new to the project, so I'm getting to learn everything here today. So thank you for having me in.
Great to meet you. The next picture which I can see is Johan. This was Johan is the next one. I just go by the pictures I have right next to me. Johan, hi there in Sweden, I guess.
Food.
We almost can't hear you. It's very low.
No?
Better.
Is it good enough?
Better.
Alright. I'm Mark Husted. I'm a freelance journalist specialized in wine and food. Before that, I worked as a chef and a sommelier. Yeah, and I really like this concept. It's nice to be able to participate, even though you don't have to travel anywhere. It's very nice. And sorry?
Great to have you here with us.
And I'm really impressed about the wines. Really good wines. Good job. Nice trying. Right.
Petra and Hilma, I can see you in the next picture.
Yes, I'm Hilma. This is
Petra, hi.
Hi. We used to live in New Zealand for 2 years, and we came back to Germany in March this year. We actually import wine from New Zealand and sell it here mainly in Germany, but also in other countries in Europe.
Okay, great. The office in Germany, in Munich.
Hi. I'm Julia. And I'm Sabrina.
I'm Petra.
We are from the PR agency and organized the hangout. And this is Peter.
I'm a food blogger in Munich.
You start first.
Okay. I'm Petra. I'm a German food blogger from Munich, and I'm writing daily about food and drinks, wine, beer. And New Zealand wine wasn't new for me, but it wasn't also a great thing. But I knew about it, a lot of it. And this year I joined the party, Bring Your Bottle party, which organized you, and it was really interesting to bring your own bottle and find a match in the New Zealand wine. And so I got more interested in these wines, and I'm happy to join this Google Hangout tonight.
And this is Thomas on the next picture. Thomas, hi there.
Hello, I'm Thomas from Germany, from the Münsterland in Westphalia, and I'm writing a wine blog since 10 years, mainly about wine history, and it's a very interesting experience here. Hangout is the first time for me. Okay.
Okay, let me just ask every one of you, how did you like the wines? Would anybody else but me comment on the wines? Johan, you were the one who said you have been very impressed. What did you especially like about it?
You're about to show me some wine tasting. I'd probably say the same as your I would. Pegasus Bay I would probably put as German. And the Gewürztraminer, I don't know really what to make of it. If it was wine, I wouldn't know where to put it, which I think is a compliment. Because it's really on its own. It's quite unique. I really enjoy it, and I think I'm looking forward to try it with some Asian cuisine.
And
you guys can't hear me very good, can you?
No, it's fine now.
How did you love the wines? Thomas?
The Gewurztraminer I like very much. I think it's a very good combination with Indian cuisine, I think, because it's very fruity.
Do you have any questions you would like to ask Ed and Barbara, as when you have the chance like tonight?
Okay, I don't know the Riesling from Edward. It's from the year 2010, and how long it can age? Because I have a little hint of this one.
Yes. So what we aim for with our Rieslings is actually 2 years in bottle before we release. We aim for all of our wines, everything under the Pegasus Bay label. We aim for a minimum of 12 months in bottle before we release the wine, which is a little bit uncommon over this side of the world. But 2 years is what we aim for the Riesling, because they really start to just drink so much better with a little bit of time in the bottle. They're starting to open up a lot more and getting more as time goes on, more and more of those toasty sort of characters. We've started to age Riesling since 2006, which we are going to start. We're going to start selling, releasing those in another 2 years. So we'll be releasing the 2006 vintage. In another 2 years' time, and then we've got the 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 in bottle. We've got just 2 pallets of each of those wines set aside. So it is a wine that we believe it ages very, very well. Have a lot of feedback from people tasting, the Rieslings of around 2000 and 2001 and 99 recently that had some fantastic feedback, but I would say at least 10 years in the bottle. This 2010 vintage will have a life of at least 10 more years. It will become obviously a lot, it will seem a lot drier, it will go more toasty, more of those marmalade-y, toasty sort of flavors will come through. The wine does have a little bit of dissolved CO2 in it, which is a deliberate part of the house style of the wine. So before we bottle the wine, we bottle it quite soon after fermentation, and we move it to the bottling line very, very slowly and at very cool temperatures, just to retain a little bit of that dissolved CO2, that spritz, which we think just really accentuates the freshness, and that's a character that should hopefully retain in the wine for a good few years, for 5, 7 years at least. But I would say a minimum of 10 years bottle age, but up to 15 depending on the vintage.
Any other question? Let me turn it around. Ed, Barbara, do you have any questions for our guests?
I have a question for Ed.
Mm-hmm.
Which part of Germany did your parents get inspiration from when they were there?
It was originally the Mosel, really. The Mosel is where they first travelled, and it was that was the first region. I mean, we love and we drink Rieslings from all over Germany now, and we get our inspiration from all over Germany, and to some extent, we like Alsace and the Austrian Rieslings as well, but not Germany more so. but as I say, nowadays, we've just found great Rieslings all over Germany. But it was the Mosel was the area that first got Mum and Dad hooked.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess the
wine tonight.
What was that?
It shows in the wine tonight. But
right.
Also.
Good. Yeah, I think. I mean, what we've always been aiming to do with this style is to try and really express the fruit and the purity of fruit, and just retain that sort of purity of fruit all the way through the making of the wine. We are firm believers that the wines can Riesling with some some phenolic character and with the right balance, it really adds an interest to the palate. And aiming for that purity of fruit, but also hopefully another sort of dimension somewhere in the background is really important. And that's the botrytis and harvesting later has helped with that. The drier style that we make, we actually we do a natural fermentation with that particular wine, and we ferment in old barrels. It's quite a different way that we approach that wine, but with this Riesling, it's all about just protecting that sort of purity of fruit all the way through the making of the wine.
Thank you. It really shows off. Very nice.
Thank you. Can I ask what trends in Riesling that you see over your side of the world? Johan, is there any? I know that people are drinking more and more drier and drier in Germany. Is it the same thing where you are?
It's been that way, yes. But I think the Riesling trend hasn't. I think it's still in the start of it.
Johan, you have to go closer to the microphone. It's difficult to hear you.
Listeners really love it, and the wine geeks do enjoy the Rieslings, but I think the common public is still starting to discover it. But I think even the sweeter ones are getting more and more popular, since we have a big influx of Asian cuisine right now, and Riesling especially is getting to be one of the typical Friday meals if you want to be trendy.
Right. Oh, it's
Barbara,
encouraging to hear.
I think especially Riesling from New Zealand is getting trendy as well.
I would like to know from Barbara, which are your export markets for your style of Gewürztraminer? Do you find them also or do you sell them also to Scandinavia and Central Europe?
The wine we tasted tonight, I'll just see Hilmar and Petra there. Hi. They are available. They are available through Hilmar and Petra, the wine you've tasted tonight, for example, and we do have a distributor also in the Netherlands for that particular style of Gewürztraminer. Excuse me.
So, Petra and Hilmar, where do you find the customers? Because you told us that you're selling the wines within Central Europe. Any responses so far to this wine style?
Yeah, actually, we are big fans of both of the wines that we tasted so far. So we are selling the Gewürztraminer from Barbara. And also, we used to sell at your Riesling, and we had the opportunity to taste it while we were visiting Pegasus Bay in January this year. And I really think, just speaking about this Riesling, so we spoke a lot about comparing German Riesling and Pegasus Bay Riesling. I think this wine is outstanding. So both of us, we didn't had a Riesling here that convinced us as much as your Riesling did. So I just wanted to say this.
Thank you very much.
Caro, to answer your question, we run a web shop here and sell to private consumers. We sell, as I said, mainly in Germany, but also consumers find us in other parts of Europe. So we have some sales of course, in Austria, Switzerland, the UK. We also sell to Scandinavia. We have some customers in Finland. So we see there on a small base, there's a growing trend for wine from New Zealand here in Central Europe. And we feel right. We have chosen to concentrate on quality wines instead of competing with bulk wine quality, which we also find here. And we are quite confident that this trend will go on, hopefully all over Europe.
And maybe to add on this is what we find that we get a very good customer feedback. Usually people are very surprised when they tasted different kinds of wine, like the Gewürztraminer or the Riesling from New Zealand. They just think it's very different, and just these type of varieties they usually don't know. So they still connect with Sauvignon Blanc and with Pinot, as you mentioned before. But yeah, there seems to be more of an openness to experience also different grapes.
Great. Claudia, as you're running a New Zealand wine magazine, as I understood, an online magazine, do you think there is an increasing interest in New Zealand culture, New Zealand wines?
Yes, sure. Because when I go to the subway in Hamburg, no day went without mentioning New Zealand in a talk in the subway in Hamburg. And I recognize the increasing interest in New Zealand wines and New Zealand culture. in Germany in the last 2.5 years because of the book fair in 2012. Because there was a great success of New Zealand, small country New Zealand, at the book fair in Frankfurt in 2012. And that's that was only also a chance for New Zealand wine. And as I recognized, there was a big campaign, and now I can get a New Zealand wine in almost every supermarket, I think. In former times it was only Cloudy Bay, Sauvignon Blanc, but today it is more. And simultaneously I follow the hashtag NZWine in Twitter, and I saw that Pegasus Bay has also a Gewürztraminer, which was mentioned in a wine magazine in New Zealand 20 or 30 minutes ago. Is it right? So you have not only Riesling, but you have also Gewürz, and what I saw, Gewürz.
I think you're producing quite a big range of varieties. There is a Gewürz in your range as well, isn't it?
Yeah, Gewürz and Merlot Cabernet and Prima Donna.
Yes, yeah, we do have a pretty broad range of varieties. I mean, our Riesling and Pinot Noir make up sort of 2/3 of the vineyard, and then we have small plantings of some other varieties, you know, Chardonnay and Sauvignon and Semillon. But yeah, there is a little bit of Gewürztraminer. We have about only about 2 acres of Gewürztraminer. We've only planted that around about 3 years ago. So the wine we're actually making under the Pegasus Bay and Main Divide label for Gewürztraminer is not actually from our home vineyard. It's from Waipa's oldest Gewürz plantings. It's fruit that we've purchased. They're 33-year-old Gewürz vines, just ungrafted on their own roots. And yeah, we're getting some absolutely amazing fruit. We're harvesting reasonably late with that Gewürztraminer. We're picking over. Picking over about 3 weeks, around about a week apart. So it's fairly rich, full sort of style of Gewürztraminer. But we do make one, but literally it's about 100 cases a year, so it's very, very small.
Barbara, are you in Marlborough? Riesling is coming as well. Are you producing a Riesling?
Yes, we've produced a Riesling for some years. And it is a dry style always. As Ed alluded to, it is Riesling is a hard sell. They seem to have cracked it where a lot of people haven't. But there is a steady demand for Riesling, and I think the off-dry style is probably the popular style. From time to time we do make a late harvest Riesling. It's not a big seller, but the flavours produced in Marlborough, I have to say, would stand up to most of the White for ones. Ed, would you think?
Yeah, no, I think there's some fantastic Rieslings coming out of Marlborough without doubt. Yeah. One of the personal, just on a general note with Riesling in New Zealand, I think one of the things that people tend to do, and I'm not talking about Lawson Dry Hills here. I'm just talking about generally something that I know my brother Matt feels, and I tend to agree, is that most people tend to harvest a little bit too early. Well, there are plenty of other examples of people that don't. There is sort of there is a tendency to pick, to play it safe and to pick early, and I think when that happens, you do kind of miss out on a lot of the more complex flavors, and making a wine with perhaps a more intensity and more interest. So I think that is starting with something we are seeing a little bit more now within the Waipa Valley, and I'm sure there will be places in Marlborough and Central doing it as well, but we are starting to see people taking the risk a little bit more and packing a little bit later, and I personally think that's going to be a really good move for the New Zealand industry, the more people that do that, and I think you can make such a broader range of different styles once you have that that level of ripeness. And we all know Riesling has no problem with the acidity. There's no, so you're still going to get fantastic acidity even with that longer hang time. So
let me just make a last question to the two of you.
That's what we do with our Gewürztraminer. We do tend to leave it longer in the vineyard, and the criteria for picking really is that you taste the spice and the berries in the vineyard, and the grapes have almost gone flabby. They're not tight, so they're left longer, and you get that development of flavour that you don't get if you rush in and pick it early and safely.
Exactly.
Let me just ask the two of you, Barbara and Ed, a last question, a good one to finish. Where do you think, how do you see the future of New Zealand wines? Is it more the diversification, giving a broader picture than only Sauvignon Blanc, introducing Gewürz and Riesling as one of the strong possibilities? What do you think where New Zealand is heading? Barbara, would you like to start for last statement?
Okay. I think the diversity of New Zealand wines that's coming through is important. We're not just a one-pony race, Sauvignon Blanc. It will always be an up-there wine for the rest of the world because nobody seems to be able to replicate the flavours that we get in Sauvignon Blanc, and I have to say, blowing Marlborough's trumpet, particularly in Marlborough. But the diversity of flavours as we've just been talking, Gewürztraminer, Riesling, and Pinot Noir, I have to say, as well, and all the other myriad of grapes, the Bordeaux-type blends that are being produced in the North Island. There's such a diversity in this one country of really good quality wines, and that is the key, is the quality. We do have to keep that right to the forefront. I think we've done very well in that level so far, and we need to be cognizant of keeping it like that, not lowering our standards for any reason at all.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with everything Barbara said there. I think the diversity of style, I think we're going to be seeing more of that. I think also the expression of sites, I think we're going to see a lot more sort of sub-regional site expressions. So, within the different regions, I think people are just going to get to know their soils and their vineyard better and better, and work out, it's going to be clearer and clearer as the vines get older, where the really special places are, and we are already starting to discover those, and what the differences are, even within a region. The vine age, I think, is a big one. We are starting to get some decent vine age. Some of the earlier producers to plant, and I think as that happens, there's more and more focus is going to be. This is my hope anyway, and my prediction. More and more focus is going to be on texture, wines with texture, and wines with mid to back palate weight. I think New Zealand has an abundance of fruit. There's no problem there, and already we're starting to see, if we looked back in the 80s, to what we're drinking now, to what we're producing now, the wines are showing so much more length and so much more mid to back palate weight, and I think that's something that that sort of balance and wines that are, will go somewhere in the bottle, wines that have ageability. I think all these things are happening already, and I think they'll continue to happen. But certainly that quality focus, there's really no there's no way that New Zealand can compete against the rest, you know, some of the hotter climate countries to make, you know, big volume of low quality cheap wine. You know, Australia and Chile and other places will be able to do that, make, you know, cheaper wine and bigger volumes at a lower cost than what we can because of our cooler climate here. So as Barbara said, just focusing on the quality is just it's crucial, and just trying to do things better, understand our vineyards better. To keep experimenting, you know, we do a lot of experimentation in New Zealand. We're not bound by a huge amount of regulation and tradition, so it does give us the ability to do a lot of experimenting, and I see that's just going to continue to happen.
Thank you very much. This sounds like the best times are still coming for you as well as for customers. And actually, I want to say a big thank you, especially to our guest from New Zealand, to Barbara and Ed, who got up pretty early to join us and who had a glass of Gewürz or a glass of Riesling for breakfast, and who will have the first cup of coffee now. But I also would like to thank very much our guests from Germany and from Sweden. We actually, as you might have seen, we started to drink our wines, not spit them, because we have about 1-2 hours more to go, and then we go to bed on our side. If you enjoyed the Google Plus Hangout, please follow us on Google Plus, and you will be updated when the next will be. This is already my 6th, and everyone has a different subject. Everyone was exciting, especially the technique. Sometimes was also adding to the excitement. And I really want to emphasize one thing. We appreciate every kind of feedback, critiques. Please send it to the agency. We will be happy because we are improving. We are pioneers in that case. I think we are one of the few in the world doing these tastings, so please, we're happy for any feedback. And if you need any more information, you are looking on Sabrina, on Julia, and Simone is somewhere in the background. Contact them and they will help you to get figures, facts, wines, information about importers and anything what you need. So thank you very much for joining us and for this really interesting discussion. And I hope I see you soon again on either the screen in front of me, or maybe next time on a tasting face-to-face or a visit in New Zealand. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Ciao, ciao.